The question of what would have happened if the Nazis won World War II has been the center of historical debate and great fiction ever since the war ended. And while there are an infinite number of possibilities as to what the world would look like under the influence of Adolf Hitler, there are some things that historians are almost positive would take place. The first and likely most important thing to factor in this discussion is deciding where, when, and how the Nazis won World War II. Hitler would have had to conquer the Allied nations before the US's involvement, meaning that once D-Day arrived, Hitler's fate was essentially sealed. Also noteworthy was Hitler's failure at capturing the Soviet Union. So it can be theorized that if the Nazis refocused the majority of their efforts on Europe and had not deviated and split their forces to face tremendous losses against the Soviets, they would have likely succeeded. But the issues Germany faced went beyond if they could win battles. Even if they managed to conquer the countries in their way, the Nazis were still radically outnumbered by individuals opposed to their ideology. And while excessive force could make up for a loss to some extent, it is highly unlikely that Nazism would have become the law of the land. They were also in dire need of oil, and were considerably undersupplied in that regard. At that point in time, the United Kingdom ran the Middle East's oil supply, with the US producing nearly 2/3 of the world's oil, and the Soviets garnered a healthy supply of their own oil. So if the Nazis were able to contain the early efforts of the Americans, take control of the Soviet Union, convert all of its new citizens to a Nazi ideology, and utilize the oil supplies gained by the newly conquered foes, the Germans could have set themselves on a path of world domination with the help of Imperial Japan. The Germans would have now spread through the remains of Europe, now with converted Soviet support. In the south, they would have easily taken over all of the continent of Africa. Here we find another split in theory. Theory 1 speculates the Nazis would have spent around 5 to 10 years radically converting the Eastern Hemisphere to Nazi ideology, and then amassing an army to cross the Atlantic, invade South America, and start utilizing the resources there, before finally taking over the United States from both the south and the east. Theory 2 speculates the Nazis charge over directly from Europe, take the United States slowly from east coast to the west coast, and then work their way into Mexico and South America as well as Canada. With that, it is estimated that the Germans and Imperial Japan will have effectively conquered the civilized world, somewhere around the mid-1950s. Germany and Japan would then either split the conquered nations into territories, or Germany, with greater influence, would attempt to eviscerate all imperial rule. If we go with that theory, we'd be looking at a planet Earth whose main philosophy is that of a Nazi Germany. Finally, there is the theory that among Nazi Germany's rise would be constant revolts by what they would consider the ethnic races. These races of Jews, African Americans, Muslims, South Americans, Indians, and Asians would actively fight back against their oppressors. Also likely would be the rise of other German-influenced ideologies, some of which would oppose Nazism, and some of which would take it to an even greater extreme. And that's what we believe the world to be like if Nazis had won in World War II. If you enjoyed the video, please like it down below. If you want to see more theoretical content, theoretically subscribe. It's about time for someone to find another retired Nazi officer in Wisconsin, isn't it?